This is Joe Shirley, and you are listening to Monday Morning Critic.
Joe, so as a composer, I have to ask you, are you offended by the skip intro option on shows?
Oh, yeah, I usually hate when anyone skips the intro, just because that's when you hear the main theme.
And I can't
Well,
imagine the work that you've put into it, right? Like you put all this work into this, you and other composers, like you've got these great intros, and it's like people are like, nah, screw this, I want to go. But it's like, no, that's part of the. I think that's the big thing we've lost over the years, Joe. Not to go old school, but like people would love to sit around for those legendary like 80s and 90s intros. Now we've become so like just like these like just devouring this like content. We skip
totally.
like the good stuff, right, Joe?
Totally. I couldn't agree more. I feel like that's part of the experience of watching a TV show or watching a movie. It's like really sitting down and listening to the main theme, or the ideas that the musicians have put together. I mean, even sitting down in the theater, I enjoy sticking around to hear the end credits, because that's, and many, oftentimes it's the suite of the main themes throughout that you've heard throughout the movie. And oftentimes it's songs, but still sitting down and, just experiencing that, because it feels like part of the experience to me, of watching a movie and watching a TV show.
Yeah, I totally agree. I completely agree. How long did you spend in Mississippi, Joe?
Oh, born and raised, so all the way through high school. Yeah, I was born in Jackson, Mississippi. I have 3 brothers, and we all played music together growing up, and went to high school, was playing music, and through high school and jazz ensemble and everything. And then, so I left Mississippi and moved down to New Orleans when I was 18. Yeah.
Were you a big movie guy? I know, clearly a musician. We know that, but like movie guy, big movie guy growing up.
Yeah, I mean, it's I've mentioned it before, but it's like we had all the we had every Indiana Jones, every Rocky movie, and the original trilogy of Star Wars, like on 3 VHS box sets,
Nice.
And just as a kid, devoured them, like I probably watched Raiders of the Lost Ark and like Rocky 4 and like Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, just like so many times. I can just remember sitting in our TV room and just loving those movies as a kid. Yeah.
And they're so rewatchable. So I was looking on because I'm redesigning my podcast studio. It's a really nice, like, I mean, it's an old school like room, if you could see the whole thing. And I was looking for like VCRs that haven't been open on eBay. The prices are insane. Like you think, okay, I could probably pick one up for $40. Yeah, add a couple more zeros and I could probably pick it up. It's crazy, Joe.
Really? No way.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Like the tracking knob, to sort of dial it in, like all these things that are so outdated now, but like that was like part of the experience of these movies back in the day. And then, even VHS was a new fangled technology when I was a kid. Before that you couldn't bring movies home, right? So it's like there's always a cutting edge in the latest and greatest. And
I want to show you something, Joe. Hold on.
Yeah.
So, like, I mean, this is what I miss. Like, I post this, like, just like I have a Shawshank VHS, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, like, even just going to like the video store, Joe, and like, like it's like it was like playing a lottery ticket. Like, am I going to get this movie or is it all out? Like, I miss those days. I mean, I'm sorry. Yeah, we're waxing nostalgic here, but I don't know. I just miss those little things. I miss all those things.
Yeah, we would. Yeah, the Blockbuster was like a weekend, tradition for me and my brothers. My little brother was obsessed with The Mask, the Jim Carrey movie. And
great movie!
I swear, it was like for like a year, every time we showed up to Blockbuster, that week, my little brother David would snag The Mask. I feel like no one else in the city of Jackson ever got to watch that movie because of him.
Now, do you go back to Mississippi? Because I know you. I mean, we're gonna just get into your early, but do you go back often, Joe?
I do for the mostly for the holidays now. Like my parents live in Madison, Mississippi, and and I've got a lot of extended family in Mississippi. A good portion of my extended family is down on the Mississippi Gulf Coast and in New Orleans and in the Louisiana area, Hammond. But yeah, most of my family's down south. My siblings have all spread out. I've got a brother that lives in Chicago, one that lives in North Carolina, and then my little brother David I think will be moving out here to Los Angeles pretty soon. So, but we've kind of spread out. But my parents are still the home base, you know, in Mississippi for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So you have two really great academic institutions under your belt, right? So you have Loyola and USC. Do I have that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So Joe, what did you take out of each of those? As far as, I mean, for me to ask you this, like just take one thing is kind of unfair, but like, can you think of a thing that you took out of each one of those institutions and them creating or developing what kind of musician you've become?
For sure. I wouldn't be able to say, you know, as you just stated, like, I don't think I could boil it down to one thing, but I would say like, just going to a music, going to a music program in my university years was like, you know, I guess instrumental, pun intended, of like, you know, just realizing the amazing stuff that's out there. And I mean, I'm kind of ashamed to admit it. It's like there are so many pieces of music that I heard for the first time in my life, like the first week of my freshman year of college. So this would have been like 2006, you know, like yeah, I mean, one that I don't know, like maybe some of your viewers are just going to be like appalled by this, but it was like I went to the music library that was part of the larger library at Loyola, and they just had an amazing music collection, right? And I was like, I've heard of Stravinsky, but I don't know if I know these pieces, you know? So like I rented the Firebird Suite and the Rite of Spring and, you know, brought it back to my dorm room and heard the Rite of Spring just on a CD. And I mean, I was like in tears, you know, I'd never heard anything like that. And I mean, that's a piece of music that at that point had existed for 100 years, but like, it it was just, I can still remember that feeling, you know, and then just like devoured it. And it was leading up to a Louisiana Philharmonic performance of that piece of music that I had tickets to, and I was really excited about it. I was like, I want to hear this first, you know. Yeah, I mean, I was a freshman in college when I experienced like so much new music for me in my experience, you know, and it was just like you constantly want to keep that, you know, sort of drive or that sort of ambition or hunger to like hear new stuff, you know, and like that's something that I really do remember in that part of my, you know, that part of my life, just like being mesmerized by this music, you know, and then like I did a semester abroad in London. I went to King's College just in the midst of my Loyola years, but just being in London for 4 months and the amount of just new contemporary music, like this would have been several years later for me, but you know, I think it was my junior year I was there. So I thankfully had studied a lot more since, you know, leading up to that point, but like, you know, I was really into contemporary music, and just the amount of like new music being played and performed in London was another one of the just completely eye-opener experiences for me. You know, it was incredible.
Can you think of a movie composer that's had that same effect on you as far as just gripping you like that? Can you think of maybe more of a modern day movie composer that's had that grip on you?
Yeah, I mean, well,
sure, again, I'm sure there's not just one. I'm asking you to narrow it down to one, which is not fair, but
it's tough. It's tough. I mean, as a kid and just still, I constantly go back to John Williams' music. I just think it's the greatest music ever written, especially greatest music ever written for film. I mean, you know, no one can do it like John Williams does it, and he's just such a master. He truly is a master of working in themes and referencing themes and playing the storyline. You know, telling the story. It's just amazing that, you know, that what we've all known and love about him, it still doesn't get old. But you know, Bernard Herrmann has always been a big favorite of mine. Like North by Northwest was an insanely amazing score that I really dove into in my USC time. Vertigo, yeah, it's just like the theme from Vertigo is just so mesmerizing and captivating that you know, I constantly go back and listen to that. Modern guys, I mean, you know, contemporaries would be like Daniel Pemberton. I just think he does amazing stuff. A big fan of what he does. And of course, Ludwig, and then Teddy Shapiro. It's like, these are guys that I'm thankful to call mentors of me.
Yeah, I was just going to say those last two are like mentors too.
Yeah. But I mean, like I knew of their music so much before I even got in the same room with them, you know, it's like these guys were folks that I looked up to for a long time, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And we're gonna get to John Williams in a couple, and those other two in a second. I was watching the Golden Globes. I want to say this was a couple months ago, and Justin Hurwitz had just won for Babylon, and he was going
Mhm.
up against some pretty steep competition. One of them was John Williams. I was stunned. I mean, maybe it's because of the moment, and you're like shocked, but I was stunned he didn't turn to John and like thank him. I was like, like because you're in the same category. It's like being in the same category as like Tom Hanks or like. I was stunned that Justin didn't turn to him and say, hey, I'm in the same category with John Williams. So it's like I almost feel like that's when it gets a little bit competitive, but like I don't know, I'm very nostalgic. Like I mean, and you kind of have the best of both worlds, right? You could kind of you're friends with a lot of these people, but you're also working alongside of them. So it's like and you've worked with John. We're gonna get to in a second, like some of these composers that you grew up just not grew up, but like loving their work. So that's like
Yeah.
I can't even imagine that layer cake. I mean, that's just so many things going on at once.
I do think it's important to appreciate, the legacy that you come. I mean, film music as an art form. I mean, film in general is still somewhat of a new, art, and accompanying a moving picture with music is something that started here. I don't know, like 100 years ago. I need to
Mm,
look back at my film history, but it's like it's still like it still feels very cutting edge, like what's happening. But knowing and appreciating and studying, a legend like John Williams is very important, I think, in every composer's journey. You know.
do you and Ludwig Göransson is a proper way to pronounce his name, correct?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So are you guys like? Do you guys like text often? Because I know like when someone from like who doesn't know about this interview or your life, when they look at your filmographies, they're close. They can see you guys have a great rapport clearly. So professional friends, I have to believe that you're close, socially as well. I mean, I would think I'm not, is that whatever you wanted to add to that, Joseph?
Yeah, of course, of course. I spent a lot more time with him when I was in the same building with him. Obviously, it's like I'm now in a studio in Burbank, California, where he works is in. It's just outside of Atwater Village. Is actually Teddy Shapiro's studio that
Yeah.
Ludwig has a couple, several rooms in. I was there for a long time with him, just like right next door. So we spent a lot more time together when that was the case. But yeah, I mean, we keep up. It's like um, having such a thrilling week last week where a couple of these projects went out. We were spending our night times together at the premieres and having a good time. And he's just a great person to have in my life. I'm very grateful for that. But like even close with his family, like his wife Serena is a world-class violinist. She's insanely talented and plays for much of Ludwig's music and has recorded much of mine as well, just because of how close we are. But she's amazing, and it just feels really nice to be that close with them, outside of simply work.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
very nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to go back to Ludwig in a second, but like when it comes to Teddy, he did for those listening, Secret Life of Walter Mitty, and
Yeah.
watching. And I'm going to get into Creed in a second too. I'm getting to a lot of stuff in a second, but like so Creed has a beautiful blend of movie score and vocal music. It's a really beautiful blend. The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, which is Teddy's project, did the same thing really well too. I mean, that's
Yeah, definitely did.
so
Definitely
you. I
did.
don't know if you learned that, if you guys talk that, but like sometimes when you watch a movie that has both, sometimes they're fighting against each other and not with each other. Uh,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Creed was not like that. Creed flowed really well, and so did The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, and that's a
Yeah.
really hard thing to do. I have to believe, Joseph.
I it is something. Well, you make a good point, because I do think just all of your experiences, as a musician, as a composer, being around musical people, you do kind of like by osmosis sort of pick up on these things and these tones, and you learn and analyze what those who came before you did, and that Secret Life of Walter Mitty main theme just like is just so timeless, and I think
Awesome,
it does.
awesome.
It's incredible. It's incredible. I was actually, I mean, this is kind of cheesy, but like I was at a like Pilates class, and it was like the point in the class, like at the end, where they wanted everybody to sit down and just kind of relax for a bit after such a hard hour or whatever, and the instructor put on that theme, And it's just so it's so
Nice.
powerful. I mean, but that's one of those pieces of music that you can constantly go back to and just like bask in its like simplicity, but directness. You know, like the tone in that bit of music is really incredible. And I do think just by hearing that and being around Teddy and gaining experience being around him, you kind of like you learn from these guys that you look up you look up to. But I have always loved incorporating vocals into film score and TV score just because it's such a it comes so natural to me, but also probably look to do it more often than I should just because it's so
Right.
fun. I enjoy singing and putting in some of those textures. I think it's just a really fun way to contemporize something. Kind
Yeah.
of like pulls it outside of like classic traditional film score and brings it into more of like a produced sound. And it's it's a fun thing that I like to try to do when I can.
Yeah, yeah, well said. Ludwig, I think, is doing the Oppenheimer score. Is he?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he is.
Okay. So I was confused. So I have two questions on that. I thought I read where you were working on it, but then I mean, I don't know. So I don't know whatever you can say. And did
I
he? Go ahead.
yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's all good. I won't be working on Oppenheimer. I'm not
Okay.
working. I mean,
Okay.
I can't wait to hear it.
Yeah.
I think I've heard like a little snippet just the last time I visited, but
Yeah.
it's probably going to be whatever it is. It's going to be amazing. I'm sure.
So I'm watching that trailer like when it first came out, and I'm
Yeah.
like, "Holy f! I cannot believe what I've just seen." Like it's like it's almost like a roller when you're going on a roller coaster. That feeling you get, like, "Oh my
Yeah,
god!"
yeah.
So does Ludwig create the music for that trailer, or is that something completely different? Because I'm like, this is unbelievable how they put this. Just the trailer. If that's what the trailer looks like, I
Right.
can't even imagine what the movie's going to look like.
I mean, not being at that studio, I would defer to Ludwig on a statement on that. But I know
Yeah.
that they did work on that trailer, and I was equally amazed. It's really incredible. Even just the motifs that are present in that trailer, it got me really excited as well. And the production of it is really well done. So I can't wait to see that movie. It comes out this summer, right? Is it
Yeah, summer. Yep. I want to say July. If I might
Yeah.
be off on that. Yeah.
Well, anyway, I'm stoked for that one. I mean, like working with Ludwig on Tenet was a highlight of my time with him for sure. Just
Yeah.
being around Christopher Nolan, who's obviously, you know, just such a genius and really, he's just everything he does is cutting edge, and you could sit down and try to analyze it for years to come. I mean, it's like no one's really making movies like that. So that was a crazy experience, is just being around Ludwig and being there to help him with his experience with Chris was truly like a highlight for sure.
I would think that's a lot of pressure too, though, Joseph. Right? Because I mean, Nolan has a tendency to go with Zimmer on a lot of stuff, But Ludwig's so talented. Like, I mean, I would think if I was Ludwig or you, that's a lot of pressure. Like, I mean, you're working with maybe the, I don't know, top 3 greatest living directors on the planet now. Like, I mean, not to say that Ludwig or you are not confident, but working with Christopher Nolan's it's not chump change. That's pretty impressive.
It is. I mean, Ludwig's, he deserves that. He deserves
Sure,
that. Like
sure, sure.
the music that he's produced has been iconic over the last 10 years. I mean, it truly is. And, why not work with one of the most iconic directors, I mean, I feel equally about Jon Favreau and now Michael B. Jordan. It's like these guys are real collaborators, very, very creative, smart, clever, world building type people who have been in this business for so long that, they really know how this business works and how to tell stories. Like being from the South, like I grew up with so many great storytellers,
Mm,
just sitting around the table or at Thanksgiving dinner or whatever holiday, you name it. It's like lots of my older relatives can like keep you just on the edge of your seat just by
mm.
telling you a story. And oftentimes like you'll hear the same story a million times over throughout the years. And like everyone at this point, even the jokes too, it's like everyone says the punchline together because we all know it's
Yeah, you know what's coming. Yeah.
it was like my dad has a couple jokes that all he does is just say the punchline without giving the lead up, because he's told the story so many times, told the joke so many times that like we still laugh even if he just says the punchline, you know. So it's very much like, for me growing up, it was a storytelling type family, and you know, the focus was on like reading and literature, and like I've got some great inspirations in my family that are just, you know, very story driven people, that it felt natural for me to like really gravitate towards like wanting to help tell stories with music in this sort of way.
Yeah.
You know, like so I really do appreciate the storytelling aspect and like the professionalism and just the creativity with these folks that I've had the pleasure of working with over the last, you know, 4 or 5 years.
I came close to getting emotional when you were telling that, because as you're talking, I'm thinking of that movie. Have you seen the movie Big Fish, where the
Yeah,
dad tells? Oh, you talk about a great. I think that's Danny Elfman. Is it Danny Elfman? I'm
I
not
think
sure.
it is. I hope that's right, because
Yeah.
I do remember being very moved by that movie. I think you're right. I think that is Danny.
Yeah, but like it's just, but you know, when hearing you talk about your family like that, it's also
Yeah.
like earlier when you were talking about those rewatchable movies, right? You know
Yeah.
what's coming, but
Yeah.
you love it the same every
Yeah.
time. That's the sign of great storytelling.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know, when I first saw Big Fish, that's funny you brought that movie up, but like my mom and I immediately started saying, "Oh, this is just like Dad," you know.
yeah.
Yeah, that was an incredible movie for sure.
Yeah. Awesome movie. Let me ask you this. So I can't let. So you mentioned King's College before, but I also feel like I've had guests there, and I've had guests that have gone to the USC's. The score. What's the official title of the degree? It's scoring.
I think they changed the name recently, but it's now called the screen scoring. It's like the screen scoring program. When I was there, maybe it was just called the film scoring program. But yeah, it's a 1-year program at USC that, you know, it's essentially a graduate certificate that you go in and, you know, spend your year working your butt off, and just learning the craft and learning the technology and figuring out how, you know, folks do this job, you know, and it can only prepare you so much. So it's like, it's almost like, you know, it's a survey, you know, like a lot of times when you're in school, the classes can only go so deep because you only have, you know, a limited amount of time, a limited amount of hours with the instructor. You know, it's essentially like it gives you a survey of this craft. And then it's on you to basically take what you learned in those short snippets of time with your instructors and bring it home and try to like really dive in, you know.
Yeah, stupid question.
It's amazing.
Yes, stupid question, Joe. But can somebody become a composer? And from all the ones I've interviewed, I've never asked this before. But can you become a composer and not know how to play an instrument? I mean, can you understand the notes? Can you understand music, but have no idea how to play any instrument? Is that feasible?
I don't think so.
I think, Joseph. I think I just described a DJ.
Yeah.
I think I just described a DJ.
I don't know. Maybe let me give that a second thought, because first it depends on what kind of music that person writes.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe like on second thought, it's like you can create so much. There's so much cool like electronic music out there that folks are creating on laptops.
Right. I agree.
Yeah. I mean, it really is amazing, like what people can do with samples and with sounds and with sample libraries and things like that. But like, I still feel like you need a bit of a bit of music theory to be able to look at a piano keyboard in order to play those sounds in. I mean, I guess you don't have to technically touch a piano anymore. You can just do it with your computer keyboard.
Right.
But I mean, it's not. I wouldn't call that type of person a composer. More or less, you know, it's like when I think of composer, I think of someone who has a pretty good understanding of music and music theory, can think and write for instruments that they don't play. I mean, that is another aspect of it, is like I can't play violin. I tried to in college. It was terrible. But like having that sort of education, I guess, you know, you do learn what type of lines are idiosyncratic for the violin itself, and you can play. You can, you know, by playing piano, you can sort of figure out what would sound good on a violin, and then you learn from experience what works there. But yeah, I mean, like I've never even attempted to play a, you know, a clarinet, but I have an idea of what works and what registers sound good for the clarinet and that sort of thing. You know, the types of, you know, styles that clarinets, you know, enjoy playing. You know, these types of things. Like I don't know if someone who's never played an instrument at all would be able to really like get into it in that sort of way.
No, I
But who
get.
knows, man? Who knows? I mean, you know, the future is music is changing like every single day. You know, there's
Yeah,
there's amazing there's amazing music, you know, created by people who have never studied music theory a day in their lives, and you know, have never played, but it's still cool music. You know.
yeah, yeah. So I asked this of all my composers. You can only take one. You can only take one of these composers work with you. You cannot take both. You don't have to answer. You can pass. Who you taking, Thomas Newman or Hans Zimmer?
Oh man.
Just so you know, every time I think of this question, I have a different answer every week. Like
Yeah.
one week it's Zimmer, I'm like, oh, it's definitely Newman, and I'm like, no, it's definitely Zimmer. But
Yeah.
Today I'm in a Newman mood, so I don't know.
I was leaning Newman, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I like, that's no shade on anybody. It's like Hans has changed
No,
the
of
game.
course not.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. That's like a Hanks Meryl Streep question. Like, who's the better actor? Like, I mean,
Right.
you can't really. It's a.
Yeah.
So what is? So I had Volker Bertelmann, who was on the show, and he did the score for All's Quiet on the Western Front. Have you seen that?
I haven't, but I've heard amazing things. I was texting with a friend just earlier today about how incredible it is.
Yeah,
I've got to see it. Yeah.
He has a track that's like 3 notes. It's like he took a shot on that. Like, you mentioned working with directors, right? As far as you mentioned Favreau a little bit earlier, he's more than just a director. But you know, it's how much of it is your call, right? Because I feel like on his part, once you see it, you'll be like, all right, that's what Derek was trying to say. I feel like that's a big gamble to do it, and he did it, and it was like phenomenal. Like, it came out beautiful. Like, you're thinking, oh my God, World War I. This is more of a kind of modern sound,
right?
But like, every time you hear it, you're leveled by it. Like, what a gamble! What a gamble, and it pays off.
Right. Yeah, I think it definitely depends on, you know, as a composer, you always want to support the vision of the person that you're collaborating with. So for the Mandalorian and for the Book of Boba Fett, it was like supporting John and Dave and Robert and now Rick's vision for what the music should be telling the audience. But with those shows, they truly do leave it pretty open. They'll give suggestions on potentially a way to, you know, approach the use of a theme or what they would want to have happen. I mean, one actual example from The Mandalorian, the first episode is out, and you know,
great episode, great music too with it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Bo-Katan's character comes in at the end, and it was kind of like a pitch that John issued to me at the beginning of the season, saying, you know, Bo-Katan, without saying too much about like even this next episode that's coming, but like we need something that's, you know, a little bit more substantial, and you know, we need to build on this theme that we had come to know from season 2. It's like season 2, episode 3, when she first shows up and is just kicking butt and super cool and kind of futuristic Mando. Her troop, you know, they had a new flavor that was brought in, and there was a motif that sort of followed her, and it was like played on a big kind of gritty, edgy synth.
Yeah.
And it's a really memorable motif that Ludwig came up with. John, at the beginning of this season, wanted us to sort of expand upon that in certain ways so that we can build on it, you know, throughout a season. And the pitch to me from him was, you know, maybe she needs to have a bit more of like a classic or symphonic, you know, almost like a John Williams approach to her character for this season. And I was like, let's go, you know, let's do it. So I kind of took that motif and flipped it, and then I sort of hit it in the end of her theme now. So like you get through the first 3 phrases of her theme that's played really beautifully on French horn, and the 4th phrase plays from, you know, which is the motif from the earlier season. But it just kind of finding ways to like hide in little musical jokes here and there. You know, it's not exactly a joke. It's more or less just like trying to craft something that still harkens back to what she was, but is
Sure.
growing in that sort of way.
Sure.
So,
Sure.
I mean, like that, he left it open, but he still pitched and wanted something that had a little bit more gravitas to her. And especially at the end of this first episode that's now out, I mean, she's totally despondent. She's kind of like, she's just off on her own, as in a, she doesn't have the dark saber. She's just kind of chilling by herself in
Kind
her
of,
life
kind of
and lost
lost.
everything. Yeah, she's
Yeah.
totally
Yeah.
lost. So we gave her a bit more of a forlorn, type of sound, and addressed her theme.
Came out great. Came out great. I loved
Oh,
it.
thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, loved it. What's it like to have like the number one movie and arguably one of the top shows on television? I mean, that it had to be a big part of each of those. That's got to feel pretty damn good, Joe. I would
yeah.
say.
It does. I mean, it's definitely it's thrilling. It's scary. I would say it's also scary. It's
Yeah.
following a guy like Ludwig is not an easy thing to do.
Mm,
It's yeah, it's just one of those things that like you constantly want to help tell the stories with the people that you're telling the stories with. So for these, there's a bit of a mix of different folks that are making these shows and these stories, but still you do want the music to still live up to what has come before it. And it's definitely something that I know that I've worked hard to earn his trust and earn the trust of my collaborators. Like Michael B. Jordan has been like more than willing to experiment with me, and we really built it. We were really into building something emotional and new, and kind of giving it its own flavor with Creed 3. It's really fun to like work with new people and try new things, but knowing what's come before it, for me, it's like, it's definitely one of those things that I still want the music to like hold up to what Ludwig so greatly contributed to these franchises, and
yeah.
I mean, it's definitely like, it's kind of scary at first, for sure. And then you
Yeah.
get into the middle of working with somebody and, experimenting with them and figuring out what tone they want to take things. And you sort of, grow from there, and you gain trust by getting into the middle of it with people,
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I was doing was I was kind of looking at like Kenobi today and Mandalorian and Boba Fett. And this last one I'm about to tell you, I was trying to compare just styles, just like each has their own way of approaching music. Like I love the way you do it. What was your take on the way Nicholas Britell approached Andor? Because I loved it. I love the way you do it. It's just you couldn't be more different in styles, but they're both great styles, right? It's like
Yeah,
it's like a steak and a lobster. They're both great, but they're not the same, right? So they're both wonderful, right? So what did you
Right.
think of what did you think of Andor and its kind of rawness, right? Almost like a I don't know. I love both styles. I think it's awesome.
It's very cool. You're reminding me that I still have homework to do, because I need to go back and finish Andor. I think I watched the first 2 or 3 episodes, and it's cool. It's like it's a new tone for Star Wars.
Yeah,
They went
yeah,
gritty and electronic and synthy, and I mean, there's still. I remember a good bit of strings and very well written and everything, and it's like tonally just a new concept, and it matches that show really well. Like that's a different type of show. With with the Mandalorian and with Boba Fett, it's kind of more like Western adventure, and so like having moments that feel more classic fantasy adventure felt good for us, and it's built off these great themes that Ludwig has written. So the tone of our shows has been slightly different, and it's a little bit more orchestral in certain ways.
You know what flavor Boba Fett and Mandalorian give me, and I'm going to butcher this guy's name. Is it's a little bit like Eno, more oh my god, like
Yeah,
not to say that you guys like, it's just got that like I get the same feeling watching like those Eastwood movies in the 70s with my dad as they do like these, like it's got that like Wild West, like something's coming. Like I love that style. It's just unique. You don't see that a lot anymore on television. You don't see that.
Right. Well, I mean, Morricone is just like groundbreaking. It's just everything he ever did. Like I've tried to like hear it all. I mean, he's just written some of the most amazing music, just music for music's sakes. Like some of the most amazing music ever.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Even Hateful Eight, he did. I think he's passed on. I hope I'm right with that. But like before he did, I think he did the Hateful Eight.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's amazing. It's amazing work, and like the breadth and like all the diverse influences he's able to sort of blend together. You know, I mean, like the first time I heard the Mandalorian main theme that Ludwig was, you know, sketching out and everything, it was like, oh my God, this sounds like classic Morricone, but you know, and it's like, yeah, and that, you know, paired with a big heroic orchestra and, you know, some amazing orchestration and everything. It's like these are, you know, it definitely harkens back to that sort of time period for sure.
Yeah.
You know, in certain ways.
So I love Creed 3. I saw it Saturday morning. Loved it. Love Creed 3. I thought it was really unique. I love your soundtrack. I love it. I bought it. Just the training montage, the round 12, and I listed these. The Void.
Yeah.
I could throw in Dame's Plan in there.
Yeah.
Right. But all four of those I kind of listen to a lot. Not that the other ones are like I'm on a loop. But even some choral stuff Joe sprinkled in there, right?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Love it. When I hear choral stuff, I feel like I'm already in. Like when I hear the choral stuff, it's just so great.
Yeah.
What a wonderful score.
Like Michael definitely, you know, maybe I'll just speak a bit about The Void in particular. It's like he really wanted it to feel like gladiators coming together and just duking it out till, you know, someone can't stand up anymore. And the way that they even like built their bodies up, you know, I mean, just how fit their physiques was, you know, it was insane.
Oh, Joe, how do you direct? I don't mean to interrupt. But like, I'm just like, you got me thinking, like, how could you direct like that, look like that, act like that, and then have time to talk to the composer about your musical vision? Like, that's insane. Joe, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I was just like,
you're good.
Yeah.
It's pretty incredible what he was able to achieve. I mean, Michael is just such a talented, smart human. He's incredible. He was coming in every week here to my studio. We'd spend Friday mornings together. If I could get 2 hours out of him, then that was like a great day. Sometimes he would just only have time to pop in for like 30 minutes or 45 minutes. But, you know, I'd be like, all right, you ready? I'm going to play these 7 cues. You ready? All right, no talking. Boom. And we just have to power through it and just see if we can get through it all before you had to take off and, you know, go back to editorial or go, you know, get ready for reshoots or whatever. I mean, it really was full on for him. And he just did such an amazing job, you know, directing me, working with me, like being open and honest about things and experimenting, you know, I mean, it's incredible. But for The Void and for a lot of the score, he wanted it to have that sort of like over the top sort of gladiator Greek tragedy, you know, just gravitas. And that was one of those scenes in the middle of the final fight that we just decided to go for it. So, you know, brought in a really wonderful singer, Maya Sykes, and I sampled her. We were kind of conducting her through the glass behind me. It was late at night. We put a TV in front of her and just let her sort of like improvise to this fight. And I took those pieces and, you know, manipulated them and processed them in certain ways to like give it that sort of produced yet sort of a concert music feel. And then during the scoring sessions, we had 3 days with the full orchestra and one big session at night with a choir, and they were just phenomenal. So like taking all these vocal elements and then adding the choir to support it and really like send it over the top was it was a special moment during the scoring sessions for sure.
How cool is that a lot of Creed 3 was created behind you? How cool is that? Like, I mean, Michael B. Jordan's down in your music studio. You got a singer in there. Man. Like that's like so authentic too. Like, I mean, that's just awesome. Like, that's so great. Joe, how is the so there's because I listen to the score a lot. Like, even if I didn't have you on the podcast, I still like try to listen to scores and listen.
That's great. Yeah.
I can hear a little bit of Bill Conti sprinkled in there. Like, I can hear like a little bit, not a lot. It's not a lot.
Yeah.
How tough is that to create something? And again, we talk about an icon, right? I mean, like, so like, and I almost had the same question about John Williams for you in a second, but how do you, because your music sounds nothing like what Conti did, but like, is there pressure there? Like, here's an iconic series. I mean, iconic composer. I mean, I don't know.
It's also like I've been a fan of Bill Conti's music my whole life, like millions and millions of other people. You know, I mean, it's like
Yeah.
I have my own memory of how that makes me feel and why I came to love it. So like that, as far as pressure goes, I think it's more about like wanting my 10-year-old self to like what I'm doing too.
That's great. That's a great quote. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but I mean, everything I've worked on in 2022 has been like insanely iconic in the pop culture sense. You know, I mean, like both Star Wars and Creed. Um, these are things that just folks have grown up with. So there's definitely pressure in trying to come up with something that harkens back and honors that legacy and respects that legacy while doing your best to put your own spin on it and not getting too fussy or too precious about getting tied up in like the anxiety of it all. You know, I mean, like with Creed, we definitely wanted to honor that sort of big heroic orchestral, you know, stroke of the brush that Conti totally started with these boxing movies, and Ludwig so beautifully added to Creed 1 and 2. You know, I mean, it's a formula, and it's definitely a sound that is needed when you're watching these boxing movies. You know, it's such a fun thing to view as an audience member, and to feel. It adds a lot of emotion into the boxing matches, but you still try your best, and especially Michael and I like tried our best to like give our own little flavor to it. I think Creed 3 to me is like a very emotional movie.
Big
and
time.
and much of the score is very subtle, you know, just supporting the amazing performances on screen, and it's just like trying to stay true to that, the heart of each scene. It's like just supporting the emotion that we're experiencing, you know.
Yeah, we talked about Michael B. Jordan, but like my God, Jonathan Majors is at another level. Like I was watching him, and here, Joe, I'm gonna. I think you were on another interview and listen, and the guy said he was he was making the point that like he was really evil. I got to tell you, I don't see Dame as evil. I don't like. So he stuck up for you. He stuck up for you. He got your back. He went to jail for a long time.
Yeah.
You never visited.
Yeah.
And you expect him to come out like, "Hey, man, nice to see you again. How's everything going?" Like. I'm going to say I see. Listen, I mean, he did say stuff about the family or whatever. They had to put that in to make him look a little evil. But as a character, I don't know. I sympathize with him. I get it. I'm not saying it's straight. I get it. I get it. Yeah, I get it.
I think it's like it's one of those aspects of this movie that makes it so great is the fact that you can root for who's supposed to be the villain, but you know, maybe he's not technically a true villain. His motives were definitely questionable, and he achieves his status in questionable ways. You know, I mean, like his first fight with Felix, he was cheating through the whole thing.
Oh yeah, I agree. I agree.
But at the same time, you understand that this guy has dealt with so much at the expense of trying to help out Adonis. You know,
and Joe, where did he learn how to cheat? In prison. Why was he in prison? Because he saved
exactly.
Creed, right? You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. It's all I would say like justifiable, and I think it is okay to root for Dame in this movie, and I think it's great that people feel that strongly about him. I mean, and just tip of the hat to Jonathan Majors and to Michael and his direction. It's just amazing what they were able to achieve. Those guys are amazing on screen together. You know, one cool aspect of the music, while it relates to Dame, is the opening of the movie. Dr. Dre's song "The Watcher" plays.
And
then in the middle of the montage, we did a cover of "The Watcher" and "The Watcher 2." You know, also Dr. Dre's beats, and J. Cole raps on top of that moment in the montage. But what's cool, I mean, Ryan Coogler pointed this out at one of our meetings, is like what I really like about this idea is the fact that Dame, the first time he sits down with Adonis in the diner, he's like, you know, I watched every single one of your fights while I was in the pen, you know? So like, it's, he was the Watcher, you know, but also like having Dr. Dre's music definitely at the opening of the movie, like just puts that sense of place, time stamp on it. We're in LA, you know, and these two guys are going out to a boxing match, and it just feels very Los Angeles, you know? and just having Dr. Dre's blessing on using his material in this movie was really great, so anyway, I just thought that was a neat aspect of Dame's character. He was the Watcher. He watched every single fight that Adonis had while he was locked up.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny because his character, I think, is more like Creed's. I think he's like Apollo's Creed's father. I think he's an because if you watch the Rocky 1 and 2, Apollo can be an a-hole sometimes, but then you're crying your eyes out at 4 when he passes. So it's like I feel Dame is closer to him than he is Clubber Lang or like Thunder Lips. He wasn't really a boxer; he was there, but or like a Drago. Like I feel like. So I don't know, and I think the music really facilitates his journey, and it's fun to see as somebody who's really passionate about movie scores. You did a great job with that.
Thank you, appreciate it.
My last question about Creed. I do think, I don't think it ruins the movie or hurts the movie at all. I do think Sylvester Stallone should have been in it. I think it was a space for him. I do, but you know what? If you have a fresh start, you have a fresh start. But I did see parts where I was like, could he have worked here? Could he have worked here? But I could see both sides of that conversation.
Like as someone who worked on this movie, it's I can see the argument. I can see your argument there. But you do have to think like if Sylvester Stallone would have showed up for just a short moment, any one of these moments that you've thought of, it's like, would it just sort of be like him and then a curtain call and then he's out? So like, does it really? Could it have been done in a way that supports the journey that the real story was between Dame and Adonis? So it's a new legacy they're building, and I think it's really well done in just how smart they came up with the story. Keenan and Zach, who wrote this movie, they really did an amazing job, like building a story that didn't quite necessitate having Sylvester Stallone there. And hopefully folks will appreciate it still, just for the fact that it's a good movie, without him.
I was not ready for that ending. Like, I'm pretty good at calling things. I was not ready for that ending. Like, just maybe, I guess it's a spoiler, but like just the two of them talking, like I was like, bring out the tissues a little bit. Like, just a sweet moment. And what I love most is at the end of the movie, people were clapping. Like, that's the best feeling.
That's great, man.
Yeah, that's when you hit the mark. It's just like I was dying to tell you that for a week because I knew we were going to speak. So yeah, man, congratulations! What a wonderful job you did.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that, for real.
2 questions left. So we talked about how Michael B. Jordan would be in your studio when he could, talking about the music. How much input does Dave Filoni or John Williams or Favreau have in your music as it applies to Star Wars? Or Mandalorian.
Yeah, John Williams doesn't have any input except for just me studying his material for my whole life. So
I should say influence when it comes to him. Yeah, input was the wrong word for him. Yeah,
I got influence. You. No, a great deal of influence. Guys like collaborators like Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni. With this season, it was also Rick. They do have a lot of influence on like what they want the music to do, as long as it supports their vision. But like they at the same time they leave it open. There are so many cues that I think they sit back and they enjoy when we have a playback, I think, because it's a new surprise. Like sometimes you can offer a piece of music to them that is not maybe what they expected, but it helps support like that scene and the story within that scene in a certain way that they weren't expecting, and they like it because of that, because it kind of freshens up. They've been working and editing these scenes down for so long that like when you just throw in a bit of emotion in certain areas for them, it's like, oh my gosh, now the scene kind of you're highlighting this moment, which I really like about it. There are definitely other times where you write a piece of music and they're like, that's not it, go back and give that another spin. A guy like Jon Favreau has final say over the music in this show. And you want to write great stuff that he also appreciates and thinks supports his vision, for it. So, a great deal of influence over me as a composer, for sure.
He seems like a good dude, Joe. He seems like a good dude, Favreau.
He's an amazingly smart and kind person. I truly, like, I cherish the time that I've had with him, because I just look up to him so much. And like the references he's able to draw from, I'm constantly scribbling notes in our meetings. It's like, oh, I need to go watch that. I need to watch that. You know, I mean, he's an encyclopedia. Dave Filoni too is an
Yeah.
encyclopedia of anything Lucasfilm, you know, and these guys are just so smart and kind and collaborative. You know, it really is like you know, our meetings together, even if I'm like sweating bullets about like, are they going to like this? Are they going to like this? You know, it's still just, I just cherish everything they have feedback wise, you know, positive or negative, you know, they're always like on the mark, I think, you know.
Yeah, it's real. I mean, it's they're both really well done. Do you ever notice that sometimes track names can be a spoiler, Joe? Whether it's so
Yeah.
not necessarily, but like if somebody was
Yeah.
there's I can't think of the movie now, but like a month ago, I was listening. I like to listen to scores ahead of time. I'm like, come on. I go, this is definitely a spoiler. So
There's one hilarious example of this, and I can't remember who the music editor was on it, but it, like the movie Sixth Sense,
yeah.
like one of the tracks, I don't know. I mean, it was like the cue name in the working process. I don't think it was released in this way at all once the soundtrack came out, but it was like Bruce Willis's character, whatever his name was. It was like Bruce is not dead, sorry, Bruce is dead. You know, so like it was like the crux of the movie, like the music cue name, you know, gave the entire plot away. But yeah, I mean, I try to stay away from them. The studios usually don't want you to give anything away. So like there was, you know, there's several cues that I had to change the name of on Creed 3 so that it didn't give too much away whenever they release at least the track list. You know,
Sure.
it's like, I'm trying to think of one, you know, like the track, The Champ, which is the last
Yeah.
cue, it was a bit of dialogue that we called the cue for a year. It was called, It Was Never On You, Bro. But, you know, I just switched it because that was just kind of like using some of the text of what Damien was saying to Michael in that scene.
A little bit of
And
a spoiler. That would have been a little bit of a
it
spoiler
would
if
have
that was
been, yeah, it would have been a little bit too on the nose. And then, you know, there's, oh shoot, let me, if I can think of another one. I mean, like it's simple stuff like sometimes the music cue names while working on it are really like sort of like dumb. You know, it's like the Damien's Plan whole cue used to be called Little Man, just because
Yeah.
Felix, when they're sparring, they get upset at each other, and he's like, "Come on, Grandpa," and he's like, "Let's go, Little Man." You know, so we named that cue Little Man just because it was just kind of like some, you know, a bit of text that somebody said on screen. But you always want to go through and just make it somewhat of a substantial, you know, name. So
Yeah.
you know, it's a bit of work to stay away from the spoilers and also give it a, you know, unique name that works on a soundtrack.
You know, and I found Creed, Joe, this is the last thing I'll say. I found Creed not to be a story about, okay, here comes a good guy and a bad guy. I feel like it's a story about friendship. I'm sorry, I do.
Yeah,
Or even family if you want to go one further. I mean,
yeah,
like,
brotherhood. You know,
just beautifully. Like, there's so many ways that this, like, when I'm watching it, I'm like, please don't go. Like, please don't be the movie where Dame just walks off in the distance and limps away and is that a-hole guy that was just real tough and then has like now he has value. Now it's like for Creed to be this way to treat. I don't know. I just the way it wrapped up was perfect. Perfect.
that's
ending.
great, man. That means a lot because that was a very important scene in the locker room. Those two guys, you know, essentially just apologizing to each other. Like you needed to feel that and you needed to hear that out of them. And, you know, it means a lot. And you're just so invested in them as characters that you want them to like reconnect in that sort of way, you know, and just for Adonis to say, "Hey man, I'm sorry." You know, that's like, it's a story of redemption too, you know? I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
you know, Dame has earned his place back in normal life, and Adonis has earned his friend's respect again, you know? So, I mean, it's a bit of a story of redemption. I mean, on that note, it's like Adonis assuming the role as a great father too, you know, and a great husband, and Bianca, you know, it's a family story, you know, at the same time that it's like this aggressive, crazy, you know, brotherhood rivalry match. You know,
Right.
it is so many things, but at its heart, I think for me, it was like a story of redemption of that friendship.
Yeah, and I'm watching. I'm like, okay, Adonis, is this where you apologize? Like, we're an hour and a half into the movie, and he still hasn't apologized for not going to see him. Like, but anyways, it works out beautifully. It's playing now in theaters. Go see it. It's so great. Joe, I'm a huge fan, and I do hope you come back. This was a lot of fun. Thank you for all this time.
I appreciate it, Derek. I had a great time too.